Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Rigor Mortis podcast. My name is Adam, and again with me this week, we got my man to the right. We got Jason.
How are you today, Adam?
Dude, I'm doing pretty good, man. I'm happy to see you.
Yeah, me too. It's been a long couple weeks.
Yeah, now we kind of got over the holiday hump, and it's now back to showtime.
Yes, now it's the podcast holidays.
Podcast days, that's right. Hey, you brought a pretty interesting story this week for us.
Yeah, we're going to do the story of David Berkowitz, or the Son of Sam Killer, as he's also known.
Yeah, this is surprisingly one that I don't know a whole lot about, Jason, up until recently.
You're going to learn today.
We're going to learn. You're going to school me on the Son of Sam. Interesting, man. So, where does this all begin?
David Berkowitz, he was actually born Richard David Felko in Brooklyn, New York on June 1st, 1953. His mother was Elizabeth Broder. She grew up as part of like a impoverished Jewish family, pretty common for that time in New York.
Now, Elizabeth had married Tony Felko, an Italian-American, in 1936. After the marriage had lasted less than 4 years, Tony Felko left her for another woman.
Wow, okay. And then she, I believe, started a relationship with a married man shortly thereafter named Joseph Klinman.
Well, this was around 1950, so she had spent a period of time, I think, alone.
Right. And what's weird about this is 3 years later, she actually becomes pregnant with a child, and she chose to give the child the last name Felko, which was her first husband.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I almost wonder if that's because she had a relationship with a married man, and she did this in an attempt to hide that, potentially.
That would be my guess. Within a few days of David's birth, he's actually given up for adoption, I believe.
Yeah, and her reasons for doing so are unknown. I mean, who knows? Maybe because she had a child with a married man. I don't know.
Yeah, some people say that Klinsman, who was the married man she was having the affair with, had threatened to abandon her if she kept the baby and used his name. So it makes sense.
Yeah. So the infant boy was adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz, who lived in the Bronx.
Yeah, and I think they were a Jewish-American couple. They actually were hardware store retailers. They lived pretty modestly, which was pretty common for Jewish New Yorkers in that time.
At this time is when they had reversed the child's name and had given him a name that would be more fitting to their family, being David Richard Berkowitz.
Yeah, and he was their only child as well.
Now, Jason, from all reports, David's childhood was considered to be somewhat troubled. Although he had above-average intelligence, he lost interest in learning at an early age and became infatuated with petty larceny and started fires.
Yeah, and that's pretty common for a lot of kids who are overly intelligent at a young age to lose interest in their education. It's not a challenge for them anymore. But, starting fires and stealing things, stuff like that, not exactly a good path for a young man to be on.
Yeah, in fact, neighbors and relatives would recall Berkowitz as being difficult, spoiled, and even a bully.
Yeah, and his adoptive parents actually consulted at least one psychotherapist due to his issues, and this never really resulted in anything.
Berkowitz's adopted mother died of breast cancer when he was 14 years old, so this must have been hard for him.
Yeah, that's a prime age to have to, deal with something as severe as that. That's difficult for somebody of that age to deal with.
Also, resulting in this, his home life became strained during later years, particularly because he disliked his adoptive father's second wife. So when he had remarried, they had never built that kind of a bond.
That makes sense. He's probably at that age where he thinks maybe she's trying to replace his mother or something like that, which obviously he doesn't want. His mother passed away. You're not ever going to replace her.
That's correct. And at the age of 17, and in the year of 1971, he joined the U.S. Army and served in the United States in South Korea.
Yeah, I think he did okay. He actually received an honorable discharge just a few years later in 1974, and at that time he was actually able to locate his birth mother, Betty. And after a few visits, she disclosed the details of his birth, telling him how, he was born to basically an affair with a married man and was abandoned due to these reasons.
Yeah, this news greatly disturbed David, and he was particularly distraught by the array of reluctant father figures. So he has no male leadership, really. He's got an adoptive father that he's not pleased with, and he's got another father, his biological father, that really didn't want anything to do with him from the time he was born.
Right. He probably feels like all the men in his life that he would look up to, really just don't want anything to do with him. And his communication with his mother, his birth mother, later became strained, but he actually was able to remain in communication with his half-sister, Rosalind, which I'm sure that's nice to kind of, see and be able to communicate with your roots a little bit.
Now, during David's young life, he's had a series of menial jobs, but at one point, and I believe this was during the time of his arrest, he was actually working as a letter sorter for the U.S. Postal Service, so probably his best gig.
The Postal Service is a great job. I mean, federal benefits and things like that. I mean, that's a great job.
Now, during this time, in the mid-1970s, this is when Berkowitz starts to commit his crimes.
Yeah, he actually bungled his first attempted murder using a knife, and then he switched over to a handgun and began a lengthy crime spree throughout New York, in Bronx, Queens, and Brooklyn. He basically sought young female victims and was said to be more attracted to women with long, dark, wavy hair. As you know, most serial killers have a type that they're looking for.
Some kind of a preference, yeah. But all but one of the crime sites involved two victims. He infamously committed some of his attacks while the women sat with boyfriends in parked cars.
Yeah, he kind of seemed to enjoy doing that, kind of ruining a couple's night. It's kind of very strange. I mean, a lot of attackers won't attack if there's two people because it's harder to subdue two people.
Of course, but he was looking for people that were with boyfriends.
Right.
That's weird.
Very weird.
Very strange.
Berkowitz claims that he committed his first attack on Christmas Eve in 1975 when he used a hunting knife to stab two women. One of the victims, allegedly, was never identified by police, but the other was a teenager named Michelle Foreman. Her injuries were very serious, enough to have her be hospitalized, and Berkowitz at this time wasn't suspected of these crimes, and soon afterward he relocated his apartment to Yonkers, New York, which is just north of the New York City border.
Yeah, probably did this in an attempt to
remove himself from suspicion, I guess.
Yeah, that would be my guess. After this is when he switched to using a firearm. Kind of, I guess, upgrade the weaponry here a little bit.
Yeah, this is the first shooting that was attributed to David Berkowitz occurred in Pelham Bay area of the Bronx at about 1:10 a.m. on July 29th, 1976. Donna Loria, who was 18 years old, and her friend Jody Valenti, 19 years old, were sitting in Valenti's Oldsmobile discussing their evening at a club. Now, Donna opened the car door to leave and noticed the man that was quickly approaching the car. Of course, this would startle her, I would assume. I'd be startled in that situation. And she actually gets angered by the man's sudden appearance, and she said, "Now what is this?"
The man produced a pistol from a paper bag that he had been carrying. He braced one elbow to one knee, aimed his weapon with both hands, and fired.
Wow.
Yeah, she was struck by one of the bullets, and it killed her instantly.
Wow. So, I mean, if somebody was coming at me like that and I saw, a gun come out of a paper bag, I would almost just assume a robbery, but he didn't seem to have any intentions on that. It seems like his intention immediately was to murder them.
I would say so, for sure. Now, Jody was shot in her thigh, and a third bullet missed both women.
Wow.
The shooter turned and walked away quickly. Jody survived her injuries and said that she did not recognize who the killer was, so there's no way for her to identify.
Yeah, but she did describe him as a white male in his 30s with fair complexion, about 5'9" tall, really narrowing it down.
Yeah, it could be you or I.
Yeah, that's a very, very wide pool of people to look at. But she does say that his hair was short and dark and curly in a mod style. I don't know what that means, but this is the description that keeps being repeated by Donna's father, who claimed to have seen a similar man sitting in a yellow compact car parked nearby.
Neighbors gave corroborating reports to the police that an unfamiliar yellow compact car had been cruising the area for hours before the shooting. So at least they have something to go by.
Yeah.
They got a white guy, about average height, average weight, yellow car. So they got something to look at.
I feel like curly hair could actually be important because, I mean, I don't know a ton of men with curly hair.
Well, there's a few, though.
There's a few, but, I mean, if you're going to narrow it down, I mean, there's a lot more people with straight hair than curly hair, I would think.
But, Jason, nonetheless, another shooting occurred on October 23rd, 1976. This was a similar shooting in a secluded area of Flushing, Queens. This shooting involved Carl Denaro, who was 20 years old, and Rosemary Keenan, 18 years old. Now, they were sitting in Keenan's parked car with the windows suddenly shattered.
Wow.
Yeah, could you imagine?
Yeah, De Niro actually says later that he felt the car actually explode, which I'm wondering if that was just a metaphor for how the windows just blew out or whatnot. But
I was one time in a car that it got really hot and the window exploded, and it did sound like an explosion, like a gunshot.
That's scary.
Boom!
I've never had that happen. That's
scary. His description here, I could kind of see it,
Yeah, and of course, Keenan was pretty scared and quickly started the car and sped away for help. And the panicked couple actually didn't realize that someone had been shooting at them at that time, and De Niro was actually bleeding from a bullet wound to his head.
Now, Keenan's wounds were only superficial, but De Niro eventually needed a metal plate to replace a portion of his skull.
Wow.
And neither victim saw the attacker.
Wow, that's crazy. Police actually determined that the bullets that were embedded in the car were actually from a .44 caliber, but they were so damaged and deformed that they thought it was likely that they could never be linked to any particular weapon through like ballistics testing and things like that.
That's a pretty serious firearm. 44 caliber is a big round.
That'll do damage.
Yeah. De Niro had shoulder-length hair, and police later speculated that the shooter must have mistaken him for a woman.
That makes sense, because that kind of is his MO at that time.
Keenan's father was a 20-year veteran of the NYPD, causing an intense investigation.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's, when stuff like this happens, they have to think if this is related to him being a detective or if this is random.
Well, that's interesting because, as with the previous shooting, there seemed not to be any motive for the shootings, which makes it even harder to solve.
Right, and they weren't able to make much progress on the case at all, and many details of this shooting were very similar to the other case, but police actually didn't initially associate them because the shootings occurred in different boroughs and were investigated by different local precincts. So, that's very common where if it's like intercity or interstate, it's very hard or very uncommon for the police forces to communicate with each other.
Yeah, especially in the 70s, they didn't have, and I know we've said this in the past, they didn't have the internet, they didn't have the lightning speed ways of passing information back and forth.
Right.
So these kind of things, I think, back then would go unsolved for a period of time, and that's why you would see more, I guess you'd say, serial killer type activities in the 70s, 80s, and 90s than you probably do today.
They got away with it more. The NSA wasn't having all their conversations.
Right, and these people were not getting apprehended as quickly as they do now.
Right. Now, on November 27, 1976, Donna DeMasi and Joanne Lamino, they were 16 and 18 years old, respectively. They were walking home from a movie after midnight, and they were chatting on the porch of Lamino's home in Belarus, Queens, when a man dressed in military fatigues, who also seemed to be in his early 20s, approached them and began asking for directions.
That actually would throw me off a little bit, too.
Especially after midnight, I'm sitting on a porch. If I see anybody coming, I'm going inside. That's sketchy to me.
Creep me out, yeah.
Maybe not uncommon in a big city like that, though.
Now, he says in a high-pitched voice, "Can you tell me how to get..." But then quickly produced a revolver.
Oh, damn.
Yeah. He shot each of the victims once, and as they fell to the ground, injured, he fired several more times, striking the apartment building before running away. A neighbor heard the gunshots, rushed out of the apartment building, and saw a blond man rush by, grabbing a pistol in his left hand. DeMasi had been shot in the neck, but the wound was not life-threatening.
Wow.
Lamino was hit in the back and was hospitalized in serious condition. She was ultimately rendered paraplegic as a result of the injuries.
Wow, that's unfortunate. This guy, so far, this guy sounds like a terrible shot.
And you know what else? So far, the description of the shooter is totally different.
Right.
They saw a blonde man this time before somebody thought they saw a curly-haired man. Could it be that he's wearing a wig or doing something to kind of mask his disguise? He's clearly attacking people in different areas of the city, too.
Right. And it basically just seemed like crimes of opportunity. He stumbles across people and he's like, "Oh, here's my chance."
Pretty much. It must have been kind of scary, at the time to live in that area, because you never know when somebody's going to attack you, who's going to attack you, what they look like.
Right. And, the crime spree continues. During the early morning hours of January 30th, 1977, Christine Fraun and her fiancé, John Deal, were sitting in Deal's car near the Forest Hills in Queens, preparing to drive to a dance hall after having seen the movie Rocky. Great movie.
Great movie.
We love the Rocky movies.
I watched it the other day.
Yeah, we're big boxing fans here.
Of course.
I wish I could see Rocky fight on DAZN.
Good luck. 3 gunshots penetrated the car at around 12:40 a.m. In a panic, Deal drove away for help. He suffered minor superficial injuries, but his girlfriend was shot twice and died several hours later at the hospital. Neither victim had seen their attacker.
See, he seems to be coming up behind people a lot, which is keeping him from being seen for the most part.
Yeah, nobody can really get a clear image of this guy.
Right, right. And police made the first public acknowledgement that this shooting was similar to earlier incidents and that the crimes might be associated. All the victims so far had been struck with 44 caliber bullets, and the shooting seemed to target young women with long dark hair. So the police sergeant in New York, Richard Conlon, stated that police were leaning towards a connection in all these cases. Now, the composite sketches were kind of looking for multiple suspects, not just one, because they all are kind of different at that point in time.
Yeah, I mean, from the first shooting, they end up with a sketch of a dark-haired man. From the following shootings, they end up with a blonde-haired man. So it's very hard to see any kind of similarity, if you ask me. It isn't like they're coming up with a very similar composite. They're coming with very different composite sketches.
And a lot of these shootings are taking place late at night, where it can be hard to get a good visual anyway.
Very true.
Now, at about 7:30 p.m. on March 8th, 1977, Columbia University student Virginia Voskerichian, she was 19 years old, she was walking home from school when she was confronted by an armed man. She lived about a block from where Christine Freund was shot.
Yeah. In a desperate move to defend herself, Virginia lifted her textbooks between herself and the killer to be used as like a makeshift shield, but the bullet striking her head and killing her.
Yeah, I mean, damn, I've seen some of those college books. They might be able to stop a bullet, but apparently not this one.
Yeah, unfortunately, no.
I mean, these 44 calibers are not a joke.
That's what Dirty Harry had.
Is it?
The Dirty Harry gun,
Wow. So at this time, the police are starting to connect some pieces here. And on March 10th, 1977, there was a press conference that New York Police Department officials declared that the same .44 Bulldog revolver had fired the shots that killed Loria and Voskerichian. Official documents were later revealed, however, saying that police strongly suspected that the same .44 Bulldog had been used in the shootings, but that the evidence was actually inconclusive.
The crimes were discussed by the local media virtually everywhere. Circulation increased dramatically for the New York Post and the Daily News. Newspapers with graphic crime reports and commentary. Foreign media featured many of the reports as well, including front-page articles in Italian newspapers.
Yes. Have you ever been to New York City, Adam?
Yeah, in passing.
Yeah, I have too. And when they say the city that never sleeps, I mean, they're not kidding. There's people everywhere all the time. And you got to imagine that with these crimes happening and getting the publicity now, people must be afraid to go about their daily lives. These crimes are so random, and you can't just shut a city like New York City down.
I wonder how common stuff like this was in New York City in the 70s.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I know.
A lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people. And I mean, look at Chicago. Jesus, they have 50 murders a weekend. I mean, you know how many murders we had in Maine last year for the entire year? 22.
22, yeah, that sounds about right.
22 murders in the entire state in a year. That's not a lot. I mean, I guarantee you New York City probably has more than that in a month or two.
Of course.
Crazy.
Now, Jason, the attacks continue. At about 3 o'clock in the morning on April 17th of 1977, Alexander Isao, who was 20 years old at the time, and Valentia Serrani, 18, were sitting in her car near her home in the Bronx, only a few blocks away from the previous shooting that had happened, when each were shot twice. Now, unfortunately, Jason, Valentina died at the scene, and Alexander was taken to the hospital where he had died several hours later, and also not being able to describe his attacker.
Yeah, but police did say the weapon used for the crime was the same one that they had suspected in the earlier shooting. So things are coming together, and now they're going to start getting more clear because police actually discovered a handwritten letter near the bodies, written mostly in block capitals with a few lowercase letters and addressed to NYPD Captain Joseph Borelli. With this letter, David Berkowitz revealed the name Son of Sam for the first time. The press had previously dubbed the killer the .44 caliber killer because of the weapon of choice. The letter was initially withheld from the public, but some of its contents were revealed to the press, and the name Son of Sam quickly replaced the old name of the .44 caliber killer.
Now, the letter expressed the killer's determination to continue his work and taunted police for their fruitless efforts to capture him. In full, with misspellings, the letter reads,
I am deeply hurt by your calling me a woman hater. I am not, but I am a monster. I am the son of Sam. I am a little brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. He beats his family. Sometimes he ties me up to the back of the house. Other times he locks me in the garage. Sam loves to drink blood. Go out and kill, commands Father Sam. Behind our house some rest. Mostly young, raped, and slaughtered. Their blood drained, just bones now. Papa Sam keeps me locked in the attic, too. I can't get out, but I look out the attic window and watch the world go by. I feel like an outsider. I am on a different wavelength than everyone else, programmed to kill. However, to stop me, you must kill me. Attention all, please. Shoot me first. Shoot to kill, or else. Keep out of my way, or you will die. Papa Sam is old now. He needs some blood to preserve his youth. He has had too many heart attacks. Too many heart attacks. Ah, me who it hurts, sonny boy. I miss my pretty princess most of all. She's resting in Our Lady's house, but I'll see her soon. I am the monster. Some weird word. The chubby behemoth. I love to hunt, prowling the streets looking for fair game, tasty meat. The women of Queens are the prettiest of all. I must be the water they drink. I live for the hunt, my life. Blood for Papa, Mr. Borelli, sir. I don't want to kill any more, no, sir. No more I must. Honor thy father. I want to make love to the world. I love people. I don't belong on earth. Return me to yahoos. To the people of Queens, I love you, and I want to wish all of you a happy Easter. May God bless you in this life and in the next. And for now I say goodbye and good night, please. Let me haunt you with these words. I'll be back. I'll be back. To be interpreted as bang bang, bang bang. Yours in murder, Mr. Monster.
Hey guys, we want to take a moment to tell you about this new exciting game that we've been playing called Best Fiends. Now, true crime is our passion, but even we need the occasional break. So when we need that mental palate cleanser, our go-to for a refresher is Best Fiends. Let me tell you what, I was super excited when they approached us in regards to sponsoring our podcast because I'd been playing Best Fiends for months.
Now, I've only been playing this for a few weeks since you told me about it, but I really enjoy how challenging the puzzles are, and it helps keep my brain fresh for all of the information we have to take in while recording the podcast.
This game is definitely challenging, Jason. You got that right. And a lot of fun to play. So engage your brain with fun puzzles and collect tons of cute characters. Trust me, with over 100 million downloads, this 5-star rated mobile puzzle game is a must play. So do yourself a favor like Jason and I have and download Best Fiends for free. It's a great game. We definitely think you'll enjoy. Again, check out Friends without the R. Best Fiends. Download it today. Wow, that letter was all over the place.
Yeah, it makes no sense at all, but if you kind of put two and two together and kind of see what he's saying, he's actually talking about a dog.
Yeah.
His neighbor's dog, which is fucking weird.
Very weird. Now, at the time, police speculated that the letter writer might be familiar with Scottish English. The phrase, me hoot it hurts, sonny boy, was taken as a Scottish accent version of my heart it hurts, sonny boy.
Yeah, as I just read that letter, that guy does not know how to fucking spell at all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's very... The police also hypothesized that the shooter blamed a dark-haired nurse for his father's death due to the too many heart attacks phrase and the facts that Loria was a medical technician and Valenti was studying to be a nurse. How would he know this stuff?
Right. It seems these crimes seem very random, so I don't know. I mean, they're giving this guy a lot of credit because he seems fucking clueless to me. But...
I know. Now, the killer's unusual attitude towards the police and the media received widespread scrutiny. Psychologists observed that many serial killers gain gratification by eluding pursuers and observers. The feelings of control of media, law enforcement, and even entire populations provide a source of social power for them.
Yeah, I mean, we see this with a lot of killers. I mean, they like to send notes to the police or, like the DC sniper we did left those tarot cards and stuff. Like, it gives them a feeling of control. Like, you can't catch me. And now I'm going to give you more evidence and you're still not going to catch me.
With this letter, though, they were able to kind of put together some kind of a profile, so to speak. They were able to determine that he was most likely neurotic and suffered from paranoid schizophrenia.
Upon my capture, I promised to buy all the guys working the case a new pair of shoes if I can get the money. Son of Sam.
Very thoughtful.
Very thoughtful.
Now, the crimes continue, though, Jason. And on June 26th of 1977, there was another shooting.
So yeah, Sal Lupo, who was 20 years old, and Judy Placido, who was 17, had left the Elphys Club in Bayside, Queens, and were sitting in Lupo's parked car at about 3 a.m. Another common denominator. They're always sitting in cars.
And it's always early morning.
Right. Lupo was wounded in the right forearm, while Placido was shot in the right temple, shoulder, and back of the neck. But both victims actually survived their injuries.
Lupo told police that the young couple had been discussing the Son of Sam case only moments before the shooting.
Okay, let me ask you this. If you're familiar with this case, which they were because they were talking about it, why the fuck would you be sitting in a car?
Now, nobody ever thinks they're going to be the victim.
Well,
You know what I mean?
I wouldn't be sitting in any cars if everybody who's
I
sitting
know.
in cars is getting shot.
20 years old,
Yeah.
17 years old, nothing bad could possibly happen to me.
Crazy.
Neither Lupo or Placido had seen their attacker, but two witnesses reported a tall, dark-haired man in a leisure suit fleeing from the area. One claimed to see him leave in a car and even supplied a partial license plate number. So now they're starting to get a little something on this.
Yeah, that's good. That they got a little more of a lead. And on the first anniversary of the initial shooting, the police established a sizable dragnet that emphasized past hunting grounds in the Queens and Bronx. However, the next and final .44 caliber shooting occurred in Brooklyn. Now, this was on July 31st, 1977. Stacy Moskowitz and Robert Violente, both 20 years old, were in his car, Violente's car, which was parked under a streetlight near a city park in the neighborhood of Bath Beach. They were kissing when a man approached within 3 feet of the passenger side of the car and fired 4 rounds in, striking both victims in the head before he escaped into a park. Now, Violente lost one of his eyes, and Moskowitz died from her injuries.
That night, Detective Felitico was awakened at home and told to report to his 10th Homicide Division at the 60th Precinct Station in Coney Island. He was given 2 weeks to work on the Moskowitz and Violente case as a normal murder investigation. If he could not be solved within this time frame, it would be given to the Son of Sam task force.
Wow, so they're just giving... They have his whole task force now, and they're going to give somebody else a clear look at it and then just kind of send it on over to them. So, local resident Cecilia Davis was walking her dog at the scene of the Moskowitz and Valente shooting when she saw a patrol officer, Michael Catino, ticketing a car that was parked near a fire hydrant. Moments after the traffic police had left, a young man walked past her from the area of the car, and he seemed to study her with some interest. Davis felt concerned because he was wielding in his hand some kind of dark object. I'd be concerned too.
Me too. She ran to her home only to hear shots fired behind her in the street. Davis remained silent about this experience for 4 days until she finally contacted the police, who closely checked every car that had been ticketed in the area that night.
Yeah, and this was a big break because David Berkowitz' 1970 four-door yellow Ford Galaxy was among the cars that they had investigated. And on August 9th, 1977, the NYPD detective James Justice telephoned Yonkers Police to ask them to schedule an interview with Berkowitz.
The Yonkers Police dispatcher who first took Justice's call was Wheat Carr, the daughter of Sam Carr and sister of Berkowitz's alleged cult confederates, John and Michael Carr. Interesting.
Now, Justice asked the Yonkers Police for some help tracking down Berkowitz. Now, a sergeant at the Yonkers Police Department said that they had their own suspicions about Berkowitz in connection with other strange crimes in Yonkers, crimes that they saw referred in one of the Son of Sam letters. So they're kind of putting all these pieces together that all of these crimes throughout the boroughs of New York City are probably going to be attributed to the Son of Sam.
Let me tell you something, man. If you're ever going to do some kind of stupid crime, don't get a yellow car. You stick out.
Yeah, Ted Bundy.
I mean, what's with the yellow cars? You see it all the time now. With these, the more we look into these serial killers and other criminals, yellow cars.
It's true, too.
It's the strangest thing.
I think they used to be more common than they are now, too.
Probably.
Cheap insurance, I guess.
The next day, August 10th, 1977, police investigated Berkowitz's car that was parked on the street outside his apartment building at 35 Pine Street in Yonkers. They saw a rifle in the back seat, searched the car, and found a duffel bag filled with ammunition, maps of the crime scenes, and a threatening letter addressed to Inspector Timothy Dowd of the Omega Task Force.
Wow.
Yeah. Police decided to wait for Berkowitz to leave the apartment rather than to risk a violent encounter in the building. The narrow hallways with the other tenants that are around.
Right. And they also waited to obtain a search warrant for the apartment, worried that their search might be challenged in court. I don't know why they'd be worried about that.
Nah, I don't either. The initial search of the vehicle was based on the rifle that was visible in the back seat. I mean, you're able to see something, they can go in and take a look at it. Although possession of such a rifle was legal in New York State and required no special permit, the warrant still had not arrived when Berkowitz exited the apartment building at around 10 p.m. He entered his car. Detective John Falatico approached the driver's side of the car. Falatico pointed his gun close to Berkowitz's temple. while Detective Sergeant William Gardella pointed his gun from the passenger side. A paper bag containing a 44 caliber Bulldog revolver of the type that was identified in ballistics tests was found next to Berkowitz in the car, as described in The Son of Sam.
Wow. Now, I guess Detective Falatico actually said that basically the conversation said, "Now that I've got you, who have I got?" And Berkowitz said, "You know." He kind of said it in like a soft voice. And Detective Falatico says, "No, I don't. You tell me." And Berkowitz at this time turned his head and said, "I'm Sam."
No attempt to evade anything. He was
Right.
caught dead to rights.
Yep. And police searched the apartment and found it basically in disarray with satanic graffiti on the walls. They also found diaries that he had kept since he was 21 years old, 3 stenographers' notebooks, nearly all full, where Berkowitz meticulously noted hundreds of arsons that he claimed to have set throughout New York City. Some sources allege that this number might be over 1,400 arsons.
Wow.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Soon after Berkowitz's arrest, the address of the building was changed from 35 Pine Street to 42 Pine Street in an attempt to end its notoriety. I understand. Makes sense.
Right.
After the arrest, Berkowitz was briefly held in a Yonkers police station before being transported directly to the 60th Precinct in Coney Island, where the detective task force was located.
Yep, and about 1 a.m., Mayor Abraham Beam arrived to see the suspect personally, and after a brief and wordless encounter, he announced to the media, "The people of the city of New York can rest easy because of the fact the police have captured a man whom they believed to be the son of Sam."
So, Jason, after the arrest, obviously that's when the interrogation begins. Now, he was interrogated for about 30 minutes in the early morning of August 11th of 1977.
That's a very short interrogation.
Well, man, he actually quickly confessed to the shootings and expressed an interest in pleading guilty.
Wow.
The investigation was led by John Keenan, who took the confession. During questioning, Berkowitz claimed that his neighbor's dog was one of the reasons that he killed, stating that the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls.
Yeah, I think the dog's name was Sam, which is why he was considered to be the son of Sam.
Yeah, kind of bizarre. Maybe he was looking for some kind of insanity thing here. Or maybe he really was insane. Now, Berkowitz claimed that this dog named Harvey, who was also a Labrador Retriever, was possessed by an ancient demon and that it had issued irresistible commands that Berkowitz must kill.
I've had this happen to me a few times, have you?
Yeah, it's usually after drinking.
Yeah. Now, a few days after his arrest and confession, Berkowitz was permitted to communicate with the press. And in a letter to the New York Post dated September 19, 1977, Berkowitz alluded to his original story of demonic possession, but closed with a warning that has been interpreted by some investigators as an admission of criminal accomplices. There are other sons out there. God help the world. So they kind of think this might be related to a satanic cult at this point.
Would make sense as to why some would have seen a dark curly-haired man and some would have seen a blonde man.
I guess that's true.
There are multiples.
That makes sense, yeah. Now, of course, he goes through with the sentencing and whatnot, and 3 separate mental health examinations determined that Berkowitz was competent to stand trial. Despite this, his lawyers advised Berkowitz to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, but he had actually refused. And on May 8th, 1978, he appeared pretty calm in court as he pleaded guilty to all of the shootings.
At his sentencing 2 weeks later, Berkowitz caused an uproar when he attempted to jump out of a window of the 7th floor courtroom. Yikes.
I'd probably do the same thing if I was going to jail for that long.
After he was restrained, he repeatedly chanted, "Stacy was a whore," and shouted, "I'd kill her again. I'd kill them all again."
Wow.
The court ordered another psychiatric examination before sentencing could proceed. During the evaluation, Berkowitz drew a sketch of a jailed man surrounded by numerous walls. At the bottom, he wrote, "I am not well at all." Nonetheless, Berkowitz was again found competent to stand trial.
Wow.
Yeah.
On June 12th, 1978, he's sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for each murder to be served consecutively. He was ordered to serve time at the Attica Correctional Facility in upstate New York, which is a supermax prison. And, despite prosecutors' objections, the terms of Berkowitz's guilty plea made him eligible for parole after 25 years.
Crazy, yeah.
Yeah, and I guess at a later date, in I think it was 1979 in February, Berkowitz declared that his previous claims of demonic possession were a hoax. He stated that a series of meetings with special court-appointed psychiatrist David Abramson that he had long contemplated murder to get revenge on a world that he felt rejected him and hurt him.
Now, after his arrest, Berkowitz was initially confined to a psychiatric ward in Kings County Hospital, where the staff reported that he seemed remarkably untroubled by his new environment. On the day that after his sentencing, he was taken first to Sing Sing prison and then to the upstate Clinton Correctional Facility for psychiatric and physical examinations.
Yeah, 2 more months were spent at the Central New York Psychiatric Center in Marcy before his admission to the Attica prison. So he served about a decade in Attica until he was relocated in 1990 to Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, New York, where he remained for many years until he was transferred to
Shawangunk Correctional Facilities.
Yeah, we'll go with that.
Yeah.
He actually had described his life in Attica as a nightmare, and in 1979 there was an attempt on his life in which the left side of his neck was slashed from front to back, resulting in a wound that required more than 50 stitches to close.
Ouch.
But, like a true gangsta, he refused to identify his assailant, and he only claimed that he was grateful for the attack because it brought a sense of justice, in his own words, the punishment that he deserved.
Now, in 1987, Berkowitz became an evangelical Christian in jail. According to his personal testimony, this had all occurred after he had read Psalms 34:6 from a Bible which was given to him by a fellow inmate. He says he no longer referred to himself as the son of Sam, but more as the son of hope.
Yeah, that feels fair.
Yes. Now this will take us to his parole hearing.
What happened at his parole hearings?
Berkowitz is entitled to a parole hearing every 2 years as mandated by state law, though he has consistently refused to ask for his release, sometimes skipping the hearings altogether. Before his first parole hearing in 2002, Berkowitz sent a letter to the New York Governor George Pataki demanding that it be canceled. He wrote, "In all honesty, I believe that I deserve to be in prison for the rest of my life. I have, with God's help, long ago come to terms with my situation, and I have accepted my punishment." Officials at the Sullivan facility rejected his demand.
Yeah, and I don't think they're going to let him out if he doesn't want to be anyway, but he probably shouldn't be out, honestly.
Oh, no.
Of course, I mean, regardless, even with the crimes, but even if he's rehabilitated, he needs to do his time for the crimes. But in his 2016 hearing, Berkowitz stated that while parole was unrealistic, he felt that he improved himself behind bars, adding that he feels he's no risk whatsoever to society. His lawyer noted that prison staff considered Berkowitz to be a model prisoner, and once again the commissioners denied parole, which I think is just going to keep happening.
In 2018, the board again denied the release of Berkowitz on parole. His next hearing is scheduled this year in May.
Wow, it's just a couple months away. So, what do you think about him overall? You think all the crimes were him?
Absolutely. I mean, he confessed to him.
Yeah.
He confessed to him. Said that he also stated there was some cult activity potentially at some point while he was in jail. He even wrote based on that as well.
Right.
There's really no evidence to it, and there was kind of that satanic panic going on during that time in the country as well.
Right.
So I think he was kind of trying to play off that.
Yeah, and I've actually seen a few interviews with him in jail, and he seems to take responsibility for his actions and seems to be pretty genuine about it. But he definitely believes he deserves to be in jail, which he does. And I don't think there was any accomplices or anything like that. I think this was just him being a menace, basically. I mean, you look at the notebooks they found, 1,400 arsons. Holy shit!
I mean,
he burned the whole city down.
Yeah, but man, these guys they like to inflate their numbers to kind of build their status as well.
That's
I mean, how many of these guys have been caught killing 4 or 5 people and they claim that they killed 100?
Right. That's true.
1,400 arsons, you'd be able to link them to a lot of those.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Especially, I mean, he semi-concealed his crimes by sneaking up behind people. But even still, there was a lot of sightings of him doing his crimes. He wasn't super careful. It's just the people that he shot didn't see him. There were other people around that did see him.
Yeah, so. But the MO was the same. It's always in the early mornings, always couples.
Always sitting in a car.
Always sitting in a car. Yeah. So, I mean, this guy, he's done. And I don't think he's ever going to get out.
No. Do you think that he should have been considered mentally incompetent to stand trial?
No. And here's why, man. All of this stuff is premeditated. It's all kind of planned out. He's got a rifle in his car. He's got the gun in the bag. These are things that he thought about. It's almost like when he had that itch to kill, like so many others.
But he couldn't disappoint his neighbor's dog.
That's all bullshit. That's all bullshit, you know?
I agree, but
Maybe
man,
he was a schizophrenic. Or maybe he is a schizophrenic. I don't know. I mean, I don't have copies of his medical history with me on hand, unfortunately. But
right.
nonetheless, you know, he killed these people and he deserves to serve his time.
He does, absolutely. And I don't think he'll ever get out, which is good. But,
Yeah.
you know, it's so interesting to see when people like this, you know, do these interviews and whatnot, and you get a glimpse into their psyche, I guess.
The way they think.
Yeah, so weird.
Very scary.
Yeah, Ed Kemper and all them, they're just so fascinating to watch.
Well, you guys listening to this, let us know what you think of David Berkowitz. Does he deserve to be in prison for the rest of his life? Should he have a chance at parole? Is he crazy? Or does he deserve to be in prison?
Yeah.
Let us know. Shoot us an email at therigormortispodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, also send us some episode suggestions if you'd like. I mean, we're getting to that point where we'd love to have some new stories too.
Yeah, of course. You can also find us on all things social media at the Rigor Mortis Podcast.
Yep, and our personal Instagrams, mine is rigormortis_JLEW.
And you can find me at Dr. Scullyfingers. Till next time, everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for telling a friend. And we'll get back with you next week.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.